Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. TBN Israel's Yair Pinto will describe how Israel has been dealing with a lot of misinformation since the Hamas attack on October the 7th, which left 1,200 dead. For the first time ever, a member of the Blood tribe will be competing at the Olympics. We have the story. And we also have the story of a local woman who battled and beat breast cancer. BCN's Heidi Echevarria has the details of one survivor's incredible journey.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. One person has died and 4 others were wounded following a shooting Sunday night in Toronto. Shots rang out near the North Albion Collegiate Institute. Now, police say a group of 15 to 20 men finished playing soccer that afternoon when 2 suspects pulled up, got out of their vehicle, and started firing. 5 men between the ages of 40 to 60 were shot and rushed to hospital. Sadly, 1 man died in hospital a short time later. Police have not yet identified the man who was killed. They also could not confirm if the victims were targeted or shot at random. Police say they're searching for 2 suspects who are driving a newer pickup truck that is either black or dark in color. Officers are canvassing the area for both witnesses and video surveillance footage. An Israeli MMA fighter survived an assassination attempt in Ukraine. Reports say the attack against Haim Gonzalez occurred late last week while he was staying at a hotel with his son and coach. The 3 managed to escape the attempt on his life with help from local police. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari has more.
It really goes to show that Israelis now, and the question then becomes, what does one Israeli individual or a Jew living in any part of the world have to do with any policies in the Middle East when there is this kind of hostility and threats against Jews and Israelis traveling all throughout the world, in this case, for sports. So, thank you for covering the story, because I think that it really does symbolize a much bigger trend that is not being reported by the mainstream media, and really points to the anti-Semitism that has become the most horrific side effect to all of this.
Lisa Daftari will also have details of a new proposal put forth by U.S. President Joe Biden to try and get more hostages released from Hamas. She'll have details coming up later in our broadcast. You know, there's a lot of misinformation about the war in Gaza between Israel and Hamas. Now, that's according to TBN Israeli correspondent Yair Pinto. He says the misinformation campaign, putting the Jewish state in a negative light, began immediately following the October 7th terrorist attack, which claimed the lives of around 1,200 people.
Too many people around the world believe that Israel is the monster and Hamas the victim. There are, of course, many explanations for this shift in public opinion, and among prominent leaders, one of them is related to what is broadcasted in the global media and the various networks. Here, alongside reliable and legitimate reports, an entire industry of disinformation that works against Israel, especially on social media networks, was manifested. What happened here is that a huge campaign started against us on the 7th of October, when our people were still being massacred. This campaign involved the utilization of precise targeting tools of social media networks to rapidly agitate large audiences in various locations with the help of personalized propaganda. The propaganda was spread with the help of a huge army of bots, avatars, and sock puppets, the hidden warriors of social media networks. Bot is a profile on social media networks that is operated by computerized means, often from cyber farms with thousands of cell phones in India.
A man synonymous with the COVID-19 pandemic is now testifying before a U.S. House panel investigating the origins of the virus, along with the U.S. government's response. Dr. Anthony Fauci claims many of the accusations against him are simply false.
Dr. Fauci, whether intentional or not, you became so powerful that any disagreements the public had with you were forbidden and censored on social and most legacy media time and time again. This is why so many Americans became so angry, because this was fundamentally un-American. If I make a mistake, I answer to the people of Ohio who elected me. and to my own conscience. When you and your agency made mistakes, Dr. Fauci, what happened? We all need to be held accountable.
The accusation being circulated that I influenced these scientists to change their minds by bribing them with millions of dollars in grant money is absolutely false and simply preposterous. I had no input into the content of the published paper. The second issue is a false accusation that I tried to cover up the possibility that the virus originated from a lab. In fact, the truth is exactly the opposite.
We all know that nicotine is highly addictive. Raising awareness about the harm of commercial tobacco and other products containing nicotine is an initiative carried out by Alberta Health Services. Dr. Brent Friesen with AHS says it is wrong that tobacco companies are going after, targeting, and marketing their products to children.
Commercial tobacco and vaping companies are targeting, specifically targeting children and youth and young non-smoking adults, and they're wanting to replace customers who have died off as a result of using the product that they'd sold to them. Alberta Health Services involved with, such as our tobacco and vaping enforcement program, which focuses on retail outlets that sells commercial tobacco and vape products, and making sure that they are not selling to minors, persons under 18. If they're able to get youth to try or experiment with nicotine products, there's a good chance that they'll be able to recruit them. Studies have shown that the youth, 63% of youth prefer fruit-flavored vapes, and 7% candy flavored. So, once they've tried it, been exposed, and become addicted to the nicotine, then they've got them hooked.
Dr. Friesen adds that young people who use products containing nicotine find difficulty learning, concentrating, and remembering things. He also says they experience more anxiety, depression, or stress, and increased risk of chronic lung disease and damage. We all know someone who has been affected by cancer. Many have survived the disease, while sadly others have not. In this next story, BCN video journalist Heidi Echevarria chatted with a woman who was fortunate enough to survive breast cancer. This is her story.
Oh my gosh, this has to be cancer. You have that in the back of your head, you're thinking this can't be.
That was what Sandra Fuentes thought when she felt a lump in her left breast. At that time, she was pregnant and in her early 30s. Her suspicions and those of her doctors did not go to the next level.
But it wasn't until after I had my baby that we decided to dive into what this possibly could be. And because of my age, I was only 32 at the time, the doctors didn't seem to be too concerned that this could be cancer, so we didn't move too quickly. But when I actually got a doctor to look at it, it was quite quickly apparent that this was something that we had to deal with quickly.
By April 17, 2007, Fuentes already had the results that her suspicions were true. Surrender or fight. These were the options that Fuentes had when she found out that cancer touched her life. But knowing that people close to her fought and won the battle encouraged her to believe that she could do it too. And even though breast cancer took the life of her mother, her consolation was that her aunt, who also had the same type of cancer, survived the disease. According to the Canadian Cancer Society, 5,500 Canadian women will die from breast cancer. That represents 13% of all cancer deaths in women in 2024. On average, 84 Canadian women will be diagnosed with breast cancer every day. And on average, 15 Canadian women will die from the disease every day.
I was terrified, absolutely scared, but I had no choice but to fight. I had to do everything I could to make this go away. Obviously, because I had children at home and it wasn't just me I had to think about. I had to think about, the rest of my family.
Although her surgery was a not so easy process, Fuentes says that this was not the hardest part of her journey.
So I had a mastectomy to begin with. At the very beginning was my mastectomy. I had a bilateral mastectomy, which means they removed both breasts. And then I had the chemotherapy for 6 months, and then I had radiation for the 5.5 weeks or so. The hardest time was when I had to go to Calgary for radiation. And that was because I didn't have my family with me. I wasn't there every day to see my kids come home from school, get off the bus, make them dinner, give them hugs, read them stories. There was no time for me to help with homework, It was those little things that's what the hardest part was.
Going through moments of loss, such as her breast and hair, was not the only thing, because some friends also joined that list.
Losing your hair is a very tricky thing to get used to. I came from the beauty industry. My life was all about hair, and to lose a part of yourself that's become your identity really was a hard thing, but I just embraced being bald. I actually got to the point where I kind of enjoyed it. It was freeing, and I didn't have to worry about doing my hair every day. I cried a lot. It's hard because you think that somebody's going to be your support system and somebody has your back, but then for somebody to say unkind things to you while you're going through one of the hardest things of your life says more about them than it did about me. And so I did lose friends going through my cancer diagnosis because, in their eyes, I was making things all about myself, but I had to be all about myself at that time because it was everything I could do to survive.
In 2010, she got a special surgery that rebuilt her breast.
We had a really unique surgery. It's called a tram flap, and that's where they take your stomach and they reform it to make breasts. So I don't have implants. They've used all of my own tissue. They had to go in a different way. It was actually a little bit harder to get blood flow and stuff. So they had to cut a portion of my rib to get blood flow.
Although the radiation treatment left side effects, in 2013 Fuente received a clean bill of health. She also discovered the strong woman in her.
So I do have a little bit of lung damage from the radiation, which does leave me a little bit breathless, and doing exercise can sometimes be a little bit harder for my lungs, and I don't recover from sicknesses as well, but it's not anything I can't handle. I discovered I'm stronger than I thought I was. That's the biggest thing. I did it, and I came out of it, and I came out of it stronger. I'm not as scared of things as I used to be.
Today, 17 years later, she is not only a cancer survivor, but she is also an active mother with 3 children and a store manager who transmits strength to those who today fight against this disease. For Bridge City News, I'm Heidi Echavarria.
More than 9,000 Public Service Alliance of Canada members who work for the Canada Border Services Agency will be in a strike position as of Thursday. The national president of the Customs and Immigration Union says members want pay parity with other law enforcement agencies. The union says CBSA is also short thousands of officers. Officials want those positions to be filled with permanent employees and not contract replacements. The two sides go into mediation on Tuesday. Well, we had kind of a mixed bag today here in southwestern Alberta, some sunshine mixed with clouds and even light showers. Jeanette Rocher is now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, as for the rest of the week, can we look forward to more blue skies?
Yeah, for sure. We should start to see a lot of blue sky, as a matter of fact, this week. Hal, as we gradually make our way towards the latter part of the week, we're also going to see those temperatures start to climb quite a bit. So it's going to feel a lot more like summer soon. Not so much tonight, as we're looking at an overnight low of 8 degrees, and also could see a 60% chance of showers early this evening, ending overnight and then clearing up by the morning to give us that nice clear sky and blue skies there that we were talking about earlier. Also, we are contending still with that wind from the west, gusting from 50 to 70 kilometers per hour overnight and into Tuesday. But a nice sunny day, like I said, 19 degrees for a high. And I'll be back later in the show to tell you just how much hotter it's about to get. Hal?
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Federal Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault says Canada will invest $530 million for an initiative to help municipalities build more resilience to climate-related events. He made the announcement at the launch of Environment Week here in Canada.
In a world of floods, vicious storms, wildfires, and other climate impacts, making our communities more livable means planning ahead and building more resiliency into key local infrastructures, from bridges and roads to telecommunications. from water treatment facilities to auxiliary power supplies to evacuation routes and so much more. When I say infrastructure, I just don't mean bricks and mortar. I also mean protecting and expanding green spaces to both encourage biodiversity and to help against flash floods.
Well, Environment Week kicked off Monday morning at Lethbridge City Hall. It's a week the city set aside so that residents can take time to connect with, care for, and enjoy the beautiful environment that we enjoy here in our city. Now, during the week, a new theme and profile is revealed each and every day on the Environment Lethbridge website, starting with active transportation.
We are encouraging residents to use alternate transportation modes to get around, whether that be active transportation like cycling or using public transportation like our transit system, or micro-mobility options like the electric scooters.
The Executive Director for Environment Lethbridge, Kathleen Shepard, says events like Environment Week have really helped locals make great strides in environmental awareness.
When it comes to things like waste reduction, we can be really proud of some of the efforts that have happened there to reduce the amount of waste that's going into the landfill, and just overall awareness on everything from climate change to water. Of course, has been a big one this year, where everybody's really aware of what's going on with that issue and the steps that they can take to help.
Environment Week runs until Saturday. Now, this is also Seniors Week here in Alberta, and in celebrating the fact the province is investing $18 million over the next 3 years for new and existing seniors initiatives across the province. Government officials say the money will also support home support and outreach services for seniors.
But one of the top objectives of our government is to continue to invest in great programs and with great partners that help seniors be able to age in place, including in their very own homes, or the homes that they want to call homes. That's why over the last couple of years we invested just over $3 million with Healthy Aging Alberta to be able to focus on being able to bring forward grants that could upgrade people's homes to be able to deal with things as simple as a bar or safety supports inside the bathroom, or snow removal, or things like yard work to be able to help seniors be able to remain inside their homes. And we have seen a lot of success over the last couple of years with that investment, which is why we're choosing today to increase that investment.
Government officials say Alberta's seniors population is now at 790,000. Last year, the seniors population increased by around 2,500 each month. Emergency services in the northeast corner of Lethbridge County respond to nearly one serious vehicle collision per week. That's according to Frank West, Fire Chief for Picture Butte. Emergency officials were on site at Picture Butte High School to show students a mock scenario involving careless driving that claimed 2 lives. Chief West hopes the demonstration will drive home a message to the students about the consequences of not driving safely.
The scenario is we had a couple of teenagers out on a Friday night, and they were distracted for whatever reason, like I said, whether that was drugs and alcohol or not paying attention to the road by looking at their phone, texting or calling, and they blew through an intersection. They weren't paying attention to the rules of the road and blew through a yield sign or a stop sign and impacted another unknowing civilian in their vehicle and caused some harm and some trauma to some other people in the community based on their inappropriate actions.
In addition to educating young people about safe driving, Chief West adds the demonstration is also geared towards appealing to those who may have an interest in a career in EMS. A member of the Blood Tribe has been awarded a spot on Team Canada for the Paris Olympics next month. It's a first for someone from the Blackfoot Confederacy. BCN's Landon Hickok has more now on Alberta swimmer Apollo Hess.
A special ceremony took place in recognition of a young member of the Blood Tribe. Here in the community of Standoff, 21-year-old Apollo Hess received a headdress transfer ceremony in celebration of his spot in this year's Summer Olympics. Apollo qualified for Team Canada from the Canada Olympic Trials in Toronto last month, where he was the runner-up in the men's 100-meter breaststroke. This makes him the first member of the Blood Tribe to compete for the Olympics, as well as the first Indigenous swimmer to compete for Team Canada. Apollo says this was a goal that he's been working for years to accomplish.
I feel like most kids, when they play sports growing up, they kind of dream about going to the Olympics, and so for me it was always kind of more of a dream, and not for at least the last like six or 7 years. It's kind of been more of an actual possibility. So. This is it's a dream come true.
Apollo has won 2 national titles at the Youth Sports National Championships when he was studying at the University of Lethbridge. Apollo says that he's proud to represent the Blood Tribe Nation, which is the largest First Nations reserved by area in Canada.
I'm just excited, and I'm just very proud of where I come from.
Apollo will make his way to France in late July to compete in the men's 4x100 medley relay, where he'll not only represent his community, but his country as a whole.
The Edmonton Oilers reached the Stanley Cup final for the first time since 2006, following a hard-fought 2-1 win over the Dallas Stars in Game 6 of the Western Conference Final. The Oilers have a chance to win Edmonton's first cup since 1990 and become the first Canadian team to sip from Lord Stanley's mug since the Montreal Canadiens did it back in 1993.
It's been a bit of a bumpy road, obviously, whether it be, off years or, heartbreak in the playoffs or whatever it is. This was always part of the plan to be in this moment, and I think the group has always stuck with it, and we've always believed in ourselves and each other, and, knew that this, to put ourselves in this position was always a possibility, and feels good to have done that.
Let's bring the cup home to Canada. Good luck. Well, we saw light showers in parts of southwestern Alberta today, and it appears, however, that the rain clouds may be leaving us fairly soon. Full weather details are coming up. Well, we experienced a little more moisture in parts of southwestern Alberta today. Jeanette Rocher is now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, it looks like, however, the clouds may be breaking soon, and we should see clear skies for the remainder of the week.
Yeah, that's right. Starting Tuesday morning, actually, those clouds should clear, leaving us with a lot of blue sky this week. But first of all, we could see that chance of showers this evening, still 60% overnight. And then as we get into Tuesday, we are still contending with that strong wind from the west, the 50 to 70 kilometers per hour. That should last into Tuesday. But look at these temperatures as they start to gradually climb. 19 for a high on Tuesday, jumping up to 21 on Wednesday, up to 23 Thursday. Still climbing on a Friday there with a high of 24 degrees. And then as we make that jump on the weekend all the way up to 28 degrees and then 25 on a Sunday. That should start to feel much more summery as we get to the end of that 7-day forecast. Average high for this time of year, 21 degrees, average low 7. 33 was our record high that happened on this day back in 1970. And in 1993, we had the record low on this day, which was only 0. That's very cold for June. Okay, sun rose this morning at 5:27, sunset this evening at 9:33 p.m. So we're now looking at 16 hours and 6 minutes of daylight. Okay, on the west coast tomorrow, we are seeing periods of rain in Victoria ending by noon, but we're still looking at, they're seeing a 30 to 50 to 70 kilometer per hour wind along the Harrow Strait there, high of 17 degrees. Those strong winds also making way in the Strait of Georgia tomorrow. Vancouver seeing 10 to 15 millimeters of rain, clearing up by the morning, or by noon rather, 17 for a high there. And in Edmonton, 18 periods of rain with a risk of a thunderstorm, and clear skies in Calgary with a high of 18 degrees as well. Seeing more rain as we get into the rest of the prairies. So Saskatoon seeing a high of 16 degrees and looking at 5 to 10 millimeters of rain, 60% chance of showers in Regina, 15 for a high there and a high of 20 in Winnipeg. Could see that risk of a thunderstorm there. Also quite a bit of rain there in Winnipeg, where they're seeing 10 to 15 millimeters of rain. Not so much on the west coast though. Clear skies in Toronto, nice sunny day there, 26 for a high. 30 is the expected high tomorrow in Ottawa. Ottawa could see a 30% chance of showers, risk of thunderstorm. Clear skies in Montreal, 32 for a high there. I should mention as well, both Montreal and Ottawa, the humidex, 34. So going to be very, very humid in those cities. 24, the expected high tomorrow in Fredericton with a mix of sun and cloud. Halifax seeing a 30% chance of showers or drizzle with a high of 18. Charlottetown also could see some showers or drizzle, 15 for a high. And 5 to 10 millimeters of rain expected tomorrow in St. John, high of 8 degrees, fog retreating into the coast, and 20 to 40K winds there. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
The data of millions of Ticketmaster customers has been offered for sale on the dark web. Live Nation, which is the parent company of Ticketmaster, confirmed it was the victim of a cyber attack. It included names, emails, phone numbers, addresses, and credit card information that was stolen. The alleged breach comes just days before the U.S. Justice Department and a number of state attorneys general filed a lawsuit to break up Ticketmaster. Agriculture experts say close to 75% of global wheat production could be threatened by drought by the year 2040. Now, scientists from Canada and around the world are looking to develop drought-resistant wheat. A research scientist with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada in Brandon, Manitoba, says it's a race against time to find a wheat variety that can withstand more severe conditions. He says drought-resistant wheat will require years of work by scientists using both traditional breeding processes and advanced genetic research. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 152 points on the day to finish at 22,116. The Dow was down 115 points to 38,571. The S&P 500 was up 5 points on the day to 5283, and the Nasdaq was up 93 points to 16,828. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down $2.91 to $74.08 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 17 cents to $2.76 US. Gold was up $23.65 on the day to $23.50.99 US an ounce, and silver was up 32 cents to $30.73 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $9.66 per bushel, barley's at $6.42, canola's at $14.39, and corn is at $7.82 per bushel. Live cattle were down $1.30 to $181.60. Feeder cattle August contract was down 20 cents to $256.20, and lean hogs were up $1.98 to $101.68. The Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours at 73.38 US. Recapping one of our top stories, for the first time ever, a member of the Blood Tribe will be competing at the Olympics. 21-year-old Apollo Hess will be participating in the Paris Olympics as a member of the Canadian swim team. A headdress transfer along with recognition from the Blood Tribe chief and council took place in Standoff earlier on Monday, celebrating his achievement. Could former U.S. President Donald Trump see jail time now that he's been convicted on 34 felony charges? American correspondent Lisa Daftari will give us her thoughts momentarily. Listen, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also, be sure to visit our website anytime to check out a number of stories and interviews. As you've heard on Bridge City News, Donald Trump was found guilty on all 34 felony charges related to his hush money trial. Sentencing will take place next month. The former U.S. president could face fines and up to 4 years in jail per charge. Wow. Now, to talk about this in more detail is American correspondent and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, who joins us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, could Trump actually see jail time? If he does, what would that mean for the Republican Party heading into the federal election in November?
Well, that's a few steps ahead, right? So let's talk about this conviction. The fact that it's brought in over $50 million for Trump in terms of campaign donations. The fact that he was found guilty on all 34 charges, the case basically became a parody of itself. And I think that a lot of Americans are reacting in a way that was not expected, meaning this is in fact being seen by many as, politicizing the judicial system because it was all 34, because it is so extreme, and because his sentencing is 4 days before the convention. I mean, it all seems very much orchestrated to bring him down. Love him or hate him, if you believe he's guilty or not. It's just that there have been cases like this before. There have been cases where politicians actually use federal money to pay their hush money. Look, it's interesting how this is playing out in terms of its timing. Not only the case itself, but the fact that obviously we are in an election year. As you asked, the main question is, can he still become president? That's what everybody wants to know. He's obviously, I think they will first appeal. That's what we assumed before they came out with a verdict. But we'll see how that goes. The appeal goes. We'll see he's a first-time offender. See, what they could pull to kind of get him off the hook a bit. But from what it looks like, there's still a clear path to the presidency, and the polls are showing that he is ahead in most of the swing states that would concern the Biden administration and the campaign going forward. So we shall see. This is not going to be a dull presidential election season, I'll tell you that much, Hal.
Lisa, U.S. President Joe Biden sent a proposal to Hamas to release the remaining Israeli captives and to end hostilities in Gaza once and for all. What do we know about this proposal?
The proposal, it's interesting because we're at a time where the Israelis are desperate to get the remaining hostages left, whomever may be left. I know a lot of them are not alive, and that will become not surprising, but of course disappointing to the families and to the Israeli government. It's been too long. The video that came out just a couple weeks ago about the women that are being raped, perhaps impregnated by Hamas terrorists, that kind of lit a fire under the Israeli government to do anything to bring them back. And that's the unfortunate part, because that anything means that Hamas will get the upper hand, will get the benefit of that desperation. It's a three-part deal, ending fighting for 6 weeks. Then we move into the first phase of the hostage release. Then you're talking about hundreds of Palestinian and Hamas prisoners being released. That is the potential of many more October 7th, which the Israelis and many others are concerned about. Obviously, nobody wants terrorists out on the streets. Well, perhaps some of the college students here in the United States do, but it's upsetting to see such division on something that is so clear. Terrorists kill innocent people who want freedom, people who are religious minorities, people who are gay, people who are writers, people who are rappers, they're musicians and dancers and everyone else. They're fixated on ending life. Unfortunately, this deal may go through, but again, we don't know how many of those hostages will make it back home safe and alive.
Yeah, praying that many of them will come back alive, absolutely. Lisa, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is going to make a record-breaking fourth address to U.S. Congress. Now, some leftist lawmakers in the United States said they would most likely boycott the event that's supposed to take place this summer over Israel's actions during the war in Gaza.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it's those who may boycott the address that need to hear it the most. Look, it's not the thing that I warn people against is looking at Bibi Netanyahu as a left, right, or center politician. Yes, there is division in Israel. There was before October 7th, just like there is in the United States and there is in Canada. There's a left, there's a right. They're usually at odds with one another. But Bibi Netanyahu, in this instance, is fighting an existential war that any Israeli politician would have to fight. So when he comes to Congress, he's representing Israel's right to exist. He's not representing Israel's right or left or center. He is representing the country, and that is our main democratic ally in the Middle East. That's not going to come across that way. I know the media, the squad, the leftist politicians who do get too much airtime, they will spin this to be something that it's not. And align Bibi with Trump and whoever else they don't like. They may boycott. I know a lot of the cabinet members in Biden's administration have already quit on the job because of the Israel policy. I think for anybody who has studied, even taken one course in foreign policy, they will understand that Israel is our ally. There's a reason why the West supports Israel and its right to exist, its right to defend itself against enemies who are our enemies as well. I hope that this is better presented to the American people and to our lawmakers that would give time to our ally Israel to make that address to Congress.
Lisa, Qatar and Saudi Arabia, not surprisingly, condemned an Israeli bill labeling UNRWA as a terrorist group. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, imagine. So It's interesting because the Qataris and the Saudis are two main players in the Middle East that have enjoyed Qatar for a longer period of time, Saudis more recently, playing both sides, meaning that they have aligned themselves with the United States, with Israel, being able to be that broker, being able to get courted for the Abraham Accords in the case of Saudi Arabia, or normalizing relations with Israel through the West. But they've also enjoyed, relationship with Iran's regime, with Hamas, with Hezbollah, and you see that with the Qataris giving money to those groups as well. Is it surprising that they're condemning Israel? No, it's more of a public stance, a position that they do take in order to find favor, again, with both sides. When push comes to shove, the Qataris and the Saudis, they want extremism out of the region. And when it comes to getting extremism out of the region, they have to support Israel in their endeavor, because they're fighting a fight that they would also have to fight. Now, it's interesting because UNRWA, there's plenty of evidence to show that those UNRWA members that are getting, again, money from the UN, getting money from the United States and Canada and many other countries, they're using that money to support Hamas. They're actual Hamas operatives that were working for UNRWA, and that has been proven, and that's why a lot of the funding has been cut from UNRWA. But to have the Saudis and Qataris come out with this kind of position, they've caught themselves in this kind of push and pull, and I think that just shows that. I don't think it really shows more than that.
Lebanon's Hezbollah hit northern Israel with around 40 rockets and a number of barrages on Sunday, surprisingly only injuring 2 people, because the Iron Dome is doing its job. Lisa, this after the Israeli military carried out a wave of overnight strikes against the terror group.
Yes, so this is the trickle that we always ask. Is this the escalation that we have awaited with Hezbollah? So as we know, the Israeli army is fighting a few fronts right now within the West Bank, in Rafah, Gaza. It's waiting and trying to calculate when the front from the north, from southern Lebanon, where Hezbollah is located, when that front will begin. Again, it's a question of when and not if. They know that Iran's regime is hell-bent on using Hezbollah from Lebanon to fire into Israel. All the weapons are pointed that way. And let's remember, Hezbollah is the more well-endowed, it's the richest, it's the most capable terror proxy of Iran's regime that was founded in 1980, right after the government came into topple the Shah and come into Iran. So that will present a bigger challenge to Israel than we've seen so far. But again, since the Israelis are anticipating this, they are taking preemptive shots at major figures, major weapons hubs in southern Lebanon.
An Israeli MMA fighter has apparently been deported from Ukraine after an alleged assassination attempt. Tell me more about that.
It's a crazy story, but look, we're seeing all kinds of things. Last week there were, several attempts at bombing synagogues all around the world. I don't know if you've heard about the Mexico City Israel embassy. There was a huge fire that protesters put on over there in a protest against Israel and policies in Mexico. I mean, who would have thought? And here you have an MMA fighter representing Israel, an assassination attempt on him. Thank God he was able to get out of the country in time and safely. But it really goes to show that Israelis now, and the question then becomes, what does one Israeli individual or a Jew living in any part of the world have to do with any policies in the Middle East when there is this kind of hostility and threats against Jews and Israelis traveling all throughout the world, in this case, for sports. So, thank you for covering this story, because I think that it really does symbolize a much bigger trend that is not being reported by the mainstream media, and really points to the anti-Semitism that has become the most horrific side effect to all of this.
Lisa, the Paris Summer Olympics begin next month, and a report from UPI says French police foiled an Islamist-style attack on the Games. Authorities said the 18-year-old Chechen national planned to target a venue where soccer matches will be played.
Right. And not surprising how there is a fixation on these types of symbolic places, venues, events in the West, whether it's in Europe, the United States, whether it's a music concert or a place where business is conducted, or in this case, obviously sports that kind of symbolize the global stage in that capacity. There was another report that we had at the Foreign Desk last week talking about the Iran regime doubling down its efforts to find terrorists on the ground in Europe to carry out its dirty work. Now, this could be in the Olympics, synagogues, embassies, individuals. No one's safe. But also how this goes to show how big these terror networks are and how easily they're able to find these useful idiots on the ground to do their dirty work anywhere they go. So when we talk about the war in the Middle East, it is creeping up on us at home, whether you're in Canada or the United States or in Paris trying to go to a soccer match. It's not safe. And this is why it is so important to understand that when you take a position to fight terrorism against Hamas, against this Chechnyan one-off, terrorist in Paris, against Hezbollah, against Iran's regime, it is not a position of, geopolitics, but really one against freedom, against being safe, against, really eradicating and rooting out terrorism wherever it may rear its ugly head. So I think there's going to have to be much more security. I think the French are in for a big wake-up call. They have had in the past, as you know, major attacks in Paris, and I think that they will have to do their due diligence for the Olympics.
We have some business news to discuss as well today. OPEC agreed on Sunday to extend most of its deep oil output cuts well into next year as the group really seeks to shore up the market amid growth, high interest rates, and rising rival U.S. production.
Oh, yes. We'll see that here at the pumps in the United States, also an election year. This is a very big deal. I think the Biden administration will have to take some sort of action. I know that they've also cut out output. So it's interesting to see the issues that come up in our election here. I know I have seen major polls say that the number one issue right now will be the border. And I'm sure that inflation, gas prices, food prices will become a major issue for Americans as well.
Political reporter and foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, thanks so much for joining us today from the Foreign Desk in Los Angeles.
Thank you so much.
Albertans should be able to feel safe in their homes and communities, whether they live in a big city or a rural area. But over the last number of years, we've been hearing a lot of complaints about increasing rural crime. However, today's guest has some encouraging news in this area. Joining us is RCMP Superintendent Mike McCauley from the Community Safety and Well-Being Branch. Welcome to Bridge City News, Mike. Great to have you on today.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. Okay, so tell us about the good news here. Apparently, rural crime in most of southern Alberta has actually decreased since 2023.
Yeah, it's. I looked at the numbers again. It's funny because in my branch, I'm in charge of crime reduction, and we focus more on offenders. We focus more on the root causes of crime versus the numbers. Of course, the numbers are important. They do tell a story, but there's so little we can control about that. But it is extremely positive to hear that many of the main drivers of crime in rural Alberta and especially in southern Alberta have decreased. Break-in enters are down 18% over the same period of last year. Theft of motor vehicles are down around 22%, and theft of over 5,000 down around 17%. So those are very encouraging numbers.
That is really encouraging. I know, I was looking at some stats as well from what you guys, RCMP, are saying. So from January to March, it looks like compared to the same period last year, there have been even fewer person crime offenses, person against person, I guess that is, 76 less, 213 fewer property crimes, and 373 less total criminal code offenses. And like you said, break-in enters dropped 18.4% in vehicles. So what do you think is leading to this wonderful news that it's we're seeing this significant decrease?
Yeah, so there's a few things I'll speak to. To be completely blunt, there's not a lot we can do to control the numbers. We there's work we can do to, again, we tackle the root causes of crime, we tackle the root causes of victimization, and I think, and I'll share some of that. And all we can do is do the best we can in those areas, and to provide the most programming to help Albertans and to try and counteract this. But I can tell you that in the last 5 years, there's actually been around 33% drop in those key property crime areas in southern Alberta, which is massive. And in 2020, they created the position I'm in now. I wasn't the original member in that position, but they created the crime reduction strategy portion of policing in Alberta, and they really put a focus on rural crime and a focus on tackling those root causes. And we saw a major decrease that first year and a half, and then it leveled off a little bit. And in 2 years ago, we created the Community Safety Wellbeing branch, which is an even more enhanced, robust strategy when it comes to tackling these issues. And we're starting to see the benefits of that. I will give a lot of credit to the frontline members, because the hardworking frontline members, if they're not there to do the policing, none of this matters. None of the programming we can create from a headquarters perspective and a strategy perspective works without those hardworking, dedicated frontline members and our community partners that embrace it.
Yeah, exactly. Now, is this the first significant decrease that we've seen in Southern Alberta rural crime in several years, or has it been sort of declining for some time now, or do you really attribute it to sort of what you guys are doing, just the difference that's made?
Well, I'd like to take some credit.
Of course.
In the provincial RCMP realm, again, it's been a big focus for the last 5 years, and we have seen the gains in the last 5 years. But it is very promising. These specific stats that brought us here today, it's very promising, and we're going to hopefully continue that trend. The biggest shift we've had, especially in the last, I'll say, year and a half, is again to develop stronger partnerships. We have partnerships with nonprofit agencies. We have partnerships with community groups. We have partnerships with AHS to tackle drug addiction, to tackle mental health, and to really, again, focus on the root causes. Because what we found is that it's all fine. Yes, police have a role to arrest people that commit crimes, and we're happy to do that, and we do it well. But what we've had to shift from, and it is a shift, I would say it's a relatively global shift, is to not just tackle that, but also to walk upstream. So we use the stream analogy. If you picture us, a beautiful stream, and coming down your screen there, at the bottom is where we pick people up and have to arrest them, or perhaps they're in the depths of drug addiction, and that's why they're committing crimes. And often our social services and police and first responders deal with people at their worst at the bottom of that stream. What we've tried to do is, how about we walk upstream and find out why they're falling in and ending up in that sad state of affairs at the end of that cesspool, and try and work on some of those reasons before we get there. And I think there's been some good success.
That sounds really practical too.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. It's when you start doing it, it's like, yeah, of course, I can keep the cycle going and arresting, and the person gets back on the streets. And if we don't give them support and services for, again, addiction is a big driver of crime. If we don't try and partner and find the most, as you said, common sense and realistic solutions for these folks to break that cycle, then we're just going to be keeping the same methods going, and it's probably not going to have any success.
Yeah, revolving door for sure. I would imagine that one of the challenges for policing is the huge geographical areas that RCMP have to cover. And, of course, slow response times sometimes can come along with that. So would more officers obviously would be helpful, right? But that normally isn't it's not usually in the budget, right? For government budget to increase the fleet. So have we seen any increases in the number of officers in rural areas or not?
Yeah, so with in recent years, there's a thing, and I won't bore you with the details, but called the police funding model. So in smaller communities have had to change their funding structure to pay and contribute towards policing. And what that's done is it's given us, an increase in resources. There has been, over the last 4 years, there has been an increase. It's not as simple as putting a police officer in every corner. That just doesn't work, to be honest. It's about coming up with an overall strategy to increase numbers where they are needed 100% in the front lines, but also to come up with supports and different strategies. So I'll give an example is the crime reduction units that exist. So Southern Alberta and every other RCMP district has a crime reduction unit where their focus is on the highest, the criminals that create the most amount of harm for their communities. And having a team like that, what we've found is you take the top, say 10, or in our case, we deal with the top 100 offenders in the province. And of course, there are some in Southern Alberta. If we focus our energy on those folks, it can actually reduce crime a great deal, because it's not just catching someone who's maybe, stealing a loaf of bread. It's going and trying to capture and keep in jail those folks that are causing an enormous amount of harm in communities. Our studies have found, and we use the crime severity index as a measuring stick for our top 100 offenders. And yes, there's the violent offenders that might commit one crime, one heinous crime, and that obviously raises their stats. But we have people that commit over and over again robberies and break and enters and domestic violence, and it's a repeat, as you said, like the revolving doors type of system. We're focusing on those folks, in addition to responding to calls and doing other preventive policing. But by focusing on those folks, if we take them off the street and spend some more time building bail packages and building assistance for the Crown to hopefully get those folks held in jail longer and get longer sentencing, then we're actually preventing a lot more crime than we are if we just kind of take a shotgun approach and try and tackle all of the problems that exist.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to like the crime of theft or property theft, are there any specific items that thieves are targeting? Is it mainly machinery and vehicles, or what are you seeing sort of in those rural areas?
I don't know if there's any specific things. What I will say is that vehicles are a huge problem in Alberta, theft of vehicles. We do a lot of programming. In the wintertime, we do Project Cold Start, which is focusing on the fact that people leave their vehicles running and go into stores. But outside of that, and especially in rural communities, folks will leave their keys on their dashboard or leave them under their visor and leave the car unlocked. 50% of vehicles are found to be stolen with the keys in the car. That is a massive number. So yes, most of the time criminals are doing crimes of opportunity. So yes, they'll go onto a rural property and they'll see what's out and about. If there's a shed open, that's where they're going to tackle looking for items, and they'll take whatever's available. So it is about target hardening. It is about taking some extra steps. My uncle has a beautiful ranch in Okotoks in Southern Alberta, and we've traveled and visit him often. And I'm always telling him, and I think of him as our other great Albertans down south, is saying, yes, you have a beautiful community here, but people will potentially come and look and see, if your door is locked, or look and see if your vehicles are locked. And if the keys are there, that's what they're going to target. If not, they'll move on to the next property. So there's a lot of steps we can take to try and prevent that.
Definitely. I think rural residents probably don't have that tendency to lock up things as diligently as city dwellers do they?
Yeah, 100%. And I love that about rural Alberta and rural Canada. Canada is a safe place. Let's be very honest about this. It's a safe place. However, there's going to be people that'll disrupt that peace, and small steps like locking your doors at night, closing your garage, locking up your sheds, that does do a massive amount of prevention when it comes to rural crime.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that roughly half of rural crimes happen between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m., right? So can you maybe tell us about something called the 9 p.m. routine?
Yeah, so a 9 p.m. routine, and I'll refer back to my uncle. When we go to visit him with my kids, we go and do chores. The rural crime chore or rural property chores that you have to do, whether it's feeding animals, whether it's just taking care of the property. my suggestion to all rural Albertans and all Albertans, to be honest, is at that time when you're doing your nightly chores, do those extra steps. Like make sure that you leave lights on in strategic areas that you typically do. Make sure you lock up the barn if you have expensive equipment in there. Lock your vehicles up. If you have surveillance cameras, make sure that they're turned on and they're active and working. Close your doors. Do those little things. If you drive by your neighbor's house, in the middle of the night and you see that their garage is open, make a quick phone call and get them to close it, right? All of those little steps truly will make neighborhoods safer and you'll be less likely to be victimized.
Yeah, that kind of comes back to that rural crime watch, almost like the neighborhood watch, right?
Yeah, 100%. And you bring up a great partner of ours. The Rural Crime Watch is a great partner. We have Citizens on Patrol as partners. All of these things, I call them force multipliers. Police can't be on every corner, as we've said. So if you have the more eyes and ears that are out there is absolutely to our benefit. And it prevents crime, but it can provide intelligence. So we truly encourage every Albertan, if you see something even remotely suspicious, call us, please. Maybe it's nothing this time, but maybe it will lead us to understanding more trends and more patterns, and allow us to better serve the communities and better prevent crime.
Mm-hmm. Now, over the years, of course, there's been a lot of debate and controversy over what rural property owners can and can't do to protect themselves. So what are the rules, especially when it comes to using, say, firearms or some other kind of force to protect your own home?
So I'll be completely frank. I get this question a lot, and I'm not going to get into the specific rules and intricacies. Every situation is different, but I will give advice. I'm good at giving advice. My advice is 100%, and you bring up a good point for firearms. When we talk about the 9 o'clock rule, we talk about target hardening. I'm actually in the middle of starting a program that's going to be coming through in the near future about like an education program on firearms. We understand Albertans have a right to firearms, and we don't want to get in the way of that. But we do ask Albertans to lock those up. Unfortunately, there's a lot of crime guns that are stolen from good, hardworking rural Albertans that have guns for proper purposes, but they get stolen because they don't necessarily lock them up properly. So that is an item that is important. Now, getting back to your question, because I'm not dodging your question. My advice is this: there's nothing on your property that's worth yourself or your family members getting hurt for. There's just not. So, if you have an option to flee, if you have an option to get out of any situation, whether that's on a rural property, whether that's on a city property, whether that's in a storefront where you are observing crime, leave the crime fighting to the professionals. We're trained. We have proper tools. And that's just that. At the end of the day, I can't get into specifics. There's so much nuance to what could get you in trouble or not get in trouble. But I'll say there's very few chances that you won't have to escape. And the fight or flight, when it comes to a criminal on your property, it should be flight. You should be trying to get out of there with your family and loved ones as safely as possible, and avoid any confrontation with any people that are on your property for legal purposes.
All right. Well, great advice there. Thanks so much for being with us today, Mike. Looks like we're out of time, but appreciate having you on today.
Well, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Mike McCauley is the superintendent with the Alberta RCMP Community Safety and Wellbeing Branch. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.